Chapter 19. Tales by the Campfire. The weather was miserable.
"Unnaturally cold for this late in the spring,"
Spurion muttered under his breath for what had to be the 10th time as they rode. Black clouds had moved in, and the rain was blowing sideways in a stiff wind. They were making slower progress than Jaden would have liked. Every 15 minutes a new group of guards relieved his litter-bearers to keep them fresh and moving at a swift pace. It would have been faster to pull him in a carriage behind a team of horses, but the route they had chosen through the forest was choked with vegetation, and the ride would not have been smooth. They covered him in a treated leather tarpaulin to keep him dry. Try as he might, he could not shake the feeling that he was lying beneath his death shroud. The fanfare at their departure had been as sullen as the weather, the sight of their prince on his litter subduing the cheers of the crowd. There had been no way of keeping the attack secret. Though only a few knew the seriousness of his injuries, it was obvious to all that he was in no condition to fight. The little party charged with escorting the runaway Droka back to their home had left at the same time. It was a comfort to him knowing that the two wayward youths would soon be back with their families, safe in the underground kingdom of Druenia. There had been only one refugee found that morning, a young man who had been brought kicking and screaming before him. After Jaden had touched him, the young man, Darian Osford, had refused to stray very far from his prince. He walked behind the litter, his eyes darting this way and that, expecting the demons to return at any moment. Eckenroy called a halt at midday, so everyone could catch their breath and have a quick bite to eat. Quandus visited with him briefly, but there was little to say. The gray-haired prophet rode Jaden's black stallion, Zadosh, and while it was nice to have the stallion nearby, he could not help wishing that he was the one seated atop the powerful horse. When he asked about Sidra, Quandus informed him that she had been chosen to scout ahead for refugees. Her skills in the forest were nearly unequaled, even among such a large force. Their conversation ended abruptly when a racking cough took hold of him, and Spurion insisted that he use the brief halt to rest. They reached Hallion's clearing late in the afternoon, joining the clearing path that connected the western half of the kingdom to Winthorn Lake in the east. The clearing itself, a 100-pace wide swath cut through the center of the forest, was the main source of timber in Crysin. Continually harvested and replanted, it looked like an uneven haircut stretching as far as the eye could see in either direction. Once, the clearing path had led to the beautiful lake city of Haviline, but all that was left of that place was a jumble of moss-covered ruins, a grim reminder that humans were not the only inhabitants in the Crystal Woods. Trolls had a very old claim to them as well.
"Trolls,"
said Eckenroy, tearing into a piece of dried venison.
"We haven't lost any of our scouts to them, think the thoughts, but they are out there shadowing us, staying just out of range. They don't want a direct fight, not against our numbers. Still, we must keep an eye on the forest. They might work up enough courage for a nighttime raid. I've got half of the sentries sleeping now so they can relieve the first shift at midnight."
Jaden eyed the tree line, imagining misshapen forms slinking through the woods in the long shadows of the evening. 3 more refugees had been brought to him in the afternoon, 3 more lives saved. He coughed, wiping a thin stream of crimson from his lips. "Are we stopping for the night?"
"Yes. I would push forward until after dark. The road is straight and clear, but the weather has dampened everyone's spirits, and we all need our rest. We'll move out at first light. With any luck, we will reach Eriden in a day and a half."
"Eriden. I should like to see it again, at the very least." The rain finally slackened enough that they were able to have open fires, and a group of soldiers was sent to gather the driest wood they could find. It took some work, but after much hissing and popping, crackling cookfires dotted the clearing. Soon after, the smell of boiling stews and roasting meats drifted through the camp. Jaden lay near the opening of his tent, staring into the flames as they gently licked an unlucky chicken that sizzled on a spit. Like Eckenroy, he too would have preferred to continue into the night, though he understood that the men needed to be in fighting condition when they reached their goal. Also, he was a little afraid to go to sleep, since there was a real possibility that he would not wake. With the onset of nightfall, the forest had come alive with the sounds of crickets and the occasional hoot of a prowling owl. The mood of the camp was not exactly tense, but there was a heightened sense of alert due to extra troll sightings reported by the scouts. Eckenroy was making his rounds through the camp to be sure that everything was in order and bolster the spirits of the troops. Jaden would have joined him under better circumstances. Few knew the real extent of the damage that the previous night's attack had caused him. It was something that Spirion decided was best kept secret for the time being. They would all know soon enough. The wizard was currently seated by the fire with Quandus. The two had thankfully desisted their usual squabbling, for everyone's sake, and were silent for the time being. All heads turned at the approach of Zureth Poole, Ekenroy's temporary second-in-command. Poole was one of the few who had been trusted with the full knowledge of Jaden's condition. As badly as Garad needed the man's guidance, the forces of the East needed his leadership more. With any luck, they would take Eriden swiftly, and he could be sent back to Mora straight away.
"Good evening, Highness,"
he said with a short bow. Jaden acknowledged him with a weak wave of the hand. It was good to have the crafty old veteran with them. He had seen much in his many years in the king's service, and his presence was calming to the troops. It was also said that he was full of old stories he had collected over the years, not the classic tales of ancient kingdoms and myths that Spirion knew, but more recent stories from Crysin's own past. Poole was widely regarded as an expert on troll lore, having negotiated nearly every peace treaty between Crysin and the localized bands in the last 2 decades.
"Is there room at your fire for one more old man?"
"Of course, Zureth."
"Old?"
remarked Quandus with mock severity.
"By my beard, the 2 of us together don't make up 1/10 of the wizard's years. A couple of pups, that's what we are."
Spirion spared the prophet a short glare only, before nodding to Poole by way of a subtle greeting. The newcomer took a seat on a log that had been rolled near the fire for just such a purpose. The flickering firelight played on his features in such a way that accentuated the deep lines of his clean-shaven face, giving him a sinister appearance.
"Do you expect any attacks tonight, Master Poole?" Spirion asked him. "Bah! Not as many out there as we first thought, and not one of them full-grown. No mountain trolls to force the brownies after us, neither. The general's just being careful. Truth is, the woods are emptier than I've ever seen. It is almost as if—"
"Almost as if what?"
"It's strange. They're not here, they certainly have not went south, and there's no reason for them to move north in large groups. If they are starting to organize in the numbers we think they are, then where are they?"
"Perhaps they are attempting to hide their numbers."
"Trolls hide their numbers? Begging your pardon, Great One, but they just aren't that smart."
"No, but we have seen that the powers behind them can be."
"I would prefer not to think about that,"
said Poole grimly, spitting tobacco.
"A full-grown troll I can face. If you can't convince him he doesn't want to eat you, then you dodge his club a few times, the thought's willing, and run him through. We mortals are more than happy to leave the realm of their masters to our betters."
Quandus sniffed.
"Unless my nose deceives me, and it never does, that bird is done."
They ate in relative silence, a simple dinner of chicken, flatbread, baked potatoes, and a cheese wedge which they all shared. Jaden laid his head back when he was finished, letting his food settle. He was comfortable and warm wrapped in his wool blankets, and his eyes were getting heavy.
"Highness,"
said a voice from far away. A light slap to the face finally brought him around. Zureth Poole was kneeling over him, concern etched on his face.
"Are you all right?"
"I fell asleep," he said lamely. Looking down, he saw that his blankets were soaked with blood. He had not even known that he was coughing. Zureth stepped away to reveal a sight that made him wonder if he really was awake. Cedra stood with several cloth strips draped over one arm, holding a helmet filled with clear water. She took Zureth's place, dipping the rags in the water and wringing them out. Kneeling, she gently began to sop up the blood and clean him. She looked tired and smelled mildly of sweat, though she was more freshly bathed than the last time he had been so close to her. Her hair had a light herbal fragrance to it, something she must have washed it with in Mora, he supposed. "Thank you." She said nothing, avoiding his eyes. If it was ever possible that there was something more than friendship between them, he knew it was no longer. That did not make him care for her any less. Random memories of their short time together flashed by in his mind. The little cave where she had cared for his wounds, gathering grass stalks to make a broom, exploring the secret basement in the Temple of the Prophet, her concern for him after the fight with Dergmont, when she had called Garad a fool to his face and come to his aid on the parapet. He placed his hand on her forearm, and she paused in her work. Her pulse was racing. "I'm sorry for my rude behavior in Mora," he told her. I was feeling so helpless stuck in that little room, and I took my frustration out on you. It wasn't right. I'm grateful for the help and support you have given me. I hope you will always think of me as a friend. My life is better for having met you." Why did she refuse to look at him? Was she still angry with him? Then a single tear coalesced from the fluid he had not noticed building in her eye. She wiped it away in irritation and turned her gaze on him, her crystal blue eyes as sharp as ever. "You do the stupidest things, Your Highness. Brave, heroic, decisive, important, selfless, honorable, reckless things. I am proud to follow you, and of course we are friends. Keep fighting, you noble lummox, so that we can continue being friends." Taking his hand gently in hers, she sat beside him and said nothing more on the matter. The other members of the little camp had pointedly ignored the emotional exchange, letting the two have what privacy they could. None of them had said it, but it was on all their faces. They did not expect that he would be with them much longer. The menacing shadows on Zureth Poole's face had returned when he sat back down by the fire, dancing with the flickering light of the flames and bringing with them a memory that Jaden had completely forgotten. "I remember, Zureth, my first visit to Mora. I was 7 or 8, I think. I thought it would be fun to sneak out of the keep on my own, with a horrible disguise I'd put together from what I could find in the royal guest chambers. One of Torvin's patrols found me easy enough, and marched me straight to you. You sat me down and told me the story of a troll hag that came down from the mountains to eat children who ventured beyond the walls without their parents."
"I did indeed. You have a good memory. Your father, I recall, had some less than kind words for me after. It seems that you convinced your mother to let you sleep in their bed that night."
"Your intentions were good. I see that now. An inquisitive youth could get into trouble without a proper respect for unknown surroundings."
"Not that it did much good,"
Poole said with a snort.
"Here you are."
Everyone laughed at the joke. They needed to. Then Jaden's laugh turned into another racking cough, and all laughter died. Cedra wiped the blood from his lips when he had recovered himself. "Tell us a story, please, Zureth," Jaden wheezed. "Something with a happy ending would be nice."
"Of course, Highness. There was this one time."
Leaning forward, Poole spit tobacco into the fire. Everyone perked up a little and focused their attention on the wily old soldier. Even Spurion was eyeing him intently, though he was trying to mask his interest behind a disapproving scowl, obviously unused to another being asked to tell a story in his presence. Poole looked at each of them grimly, setting the mood.
"I was just a young man, following in my father's footsteps in the king's service. We Easterners are a proud lot, and we didn't take kindly at first to Lord Torvin's appointment as our governor, northerner that he was. Still, he was a charismatic fellow, and some of us took to him after a time. Fearless might describe him better, even a little crazy. From the moment he arrived, he saw the crystal as his backyard playground. But there are more than just trolls in the deep wood. In the high reaches of the mountains, there are things that'll give even a troll nightmares."
He shivered dramatically, warming his hands over the fire as though frightened by the very thought of the ferocious, unknown creatures.
"One year, in late spring, a pelt trader came to Mora with tales of great treasure high up on the slopes of old Mount Motherwin, mother of all mountains, from whose majestic eastern peak it is said that one can reach a hand up and touch the realm of the great thoughts. A grizzled fellow, none too clean, and none too sane by all accounts, he took a room at the Weasel in the Mist and started to draw a crowd. The trader claimed he'd met a man who had made it near the mountain's peak, and had given him a gold coin that came from an ancient city built there. Most people dismissed him as a loon and a con, but Torvin got wind of the tale and had to see for himself. One look at that coin and something took hold of him. He decided then and there that nothing was going to stop him from reaching that city. The guide Torvin had in mind was an old one-eyed hermit, lived his whole life in the shadow of the mountain, so the locals claimed, and went by the name of Gold Sniffer. What his real name was, no one knew. We set out with 20 good men, and reached the base of the mountain with 19, after a run-in with a nasty pack of burl trunks. one of the larger troll tribes in the northeast. Had to bury young Edwin quick, before more of 'em came. I knew something was wrong as soon as we got to Rock Hollow, a glamorous name for the mining camp where we were supposed to get directions to the Hermit. The men there were hard, and there were a lot of 'em. You could almost imagine they were bred with trolls, big as they were. Crysin's borders may have reached the mountains of the northeast at one time, but these men recognized no authority. We got out of there without a fight, somehow, and with a rough idea of where we could find old Goldsniffer, and then we were on our way. Well, we found him. What was left of him, anyhow. A skeleton on a little wooden cot in a run-down shack a ways up from the base. I had a real bad feeling by that time. I told Torvin so, but once that man got it in his head that he could do something, there weren't no one short of the king who was going to stop him. So, up the mountain we went.
Jaden had a sudden chill, followed by a light tingle all over his body. It could have been from Zureth's masterfully told tale, or the touch of Cedra's hand, which was still cradled gently in his own, but he didn't think so. It was not a pleasant sensation.
We spent the first night under a little rock outcrop, Zureth continued, cold as a yeti's arse, pardon the expression, and no one slept well save Torvin, who snored so loud you could have mistaken him for a troll. Next day we lost Norval and Peyton when part of the trail gave way. Good men. I had harsh words with our esteemed governor after that, you can believe it. Most of the men were still with him, though, so on we went. That night, old Kernan went mad, a veteran I'd known for half me life. Just up and run out of the shelter we'd built and started jumping around in the snow, yelling about curses and werewolves and some other such nonsense. We didn't see what got him, but we heard it. A low growl and the crunch of bones as one of your own slowly gets ate don't do much for morale. Come morning, Torvin was the only one who was ready to keep climbing. But somehow, after we got a bit of food in our bellies, he had us talked into going on with him. That was when we saw it.
Jaden was the only one who noticed the movement. It was subtle, a little stir in the ground at the edge of the firelight that caused a twig to flip over. He didn't know what it was, but it was not the wind.
10 feet high, with blood dripping off of bared fangs. There was no fear in those cold black eyes as it stared down 16 armed men. Thick brown hide was visible where patches of grey fur were missing, evidence of previous scraps with beasties more its own size. We knew we were in trouble.
The ground bubbled.
"Zureth!"
Jaden hissed. Poole just smiled, thinking he was taken with the story, and continued unperturbed.
It sprang sudden-like, jaws snapping, landed smack in the middle of our camp and scattered us like hens with a fox in our house.
Jaden remembered where he had felt the tingling before. The first time was in his bedchamber, and again at the square in front of St. Alamon's. It was the assassin. As impossible as it seemed, he was here with them in the camp. Something round began to rise from the damp soil between the fire and the tent.
2 men went down, then a third.
"Zureth!"
Jaden shouted as loud as he could.
Relax, Highness. It's only a story.
The round object had formed into the rough semblance of a head, with leaves and sticks poking out at random.
"No,"
said Jaden, raising a shaking hand to point.
"It's back."
By the thoughts!
Poole rose, swiftly placing himself between the tent and the bizarre object that seemed to be rising directly from the ground. Shoulders were visible now, supporting what was definitely a head. 2 mud-brown eyes blinked, searching. The others were up now, too, staring at the thing in confusion.
"What is it?"
Golem,
replied Spirion in alarm.
Someone nearby has to be controlling it.
"It's the assassin. I can feel him. He's come to finish me off."
Poole spat.
Not if I can help it,
he said, drawing his longsword. One backhanded swipe, and the golem, its chest now above the ground, was minus a head. The round blob rolled to a stop near the fire, where it immediately disintegrated into a small pile of loose dirt. The remainder of the thing paused for only a moment before a new head began to sprout, and it continued to rise farther out of the ground. It seemed to be moving faster now.
"How do we kill it?"
Zureth shouted. Spirion gave him an even look.
"We need to move the prince."
An arrow whizzed past Zureth's shoulder, sinking up to the green feathers in the creature's chest with no visible effect. Sidra threw her bow down and drew her knives. The head of the golem had grown back to its full size, its new eyes blinking as it accustomed itself to the firelight once again. Zureth let out a yell, heaving his sword up over his head with both hands, then swung down with all of his might to chop the thing in half. A muddy hand shot out and grabbed his wrist before the blade could descend, as the other hand, still half-formed, struck the side of his head with a powerful thud. The aged soldier tumbled over a log and out of the firelight.
"To the prince!"
Spirion cried out.
"Arm yourselves! Look to the prince!"
Shouts went up from the neighboring campsites. The golem was already beginning to step out of the ground, its foot still coalescing as it advanced toward the tent. Sidra rushed forward, aiming a leaping kick straight at the mud creature's chest. She bounced off and fell to the ground as if she had hit a wall. The creature ignored her, set on a direct course toward the tent. One of her daggers sliced through where its ankle should be as it passed by her, but a new foot formed in mid-stride, and it did not even slow the thing.
"No!"
Quandus cried out in fear for his granddaughter. The skinny prophet pulled a long stick from the fire. Leaping forward with surprising speed for his age, he shoved the burning tip through the golem's head, where it emerged from the center of an eye. It stopped long enough to rub the embers away, then took 2 more steps until it stood directly over Jaden, who could only look up in fear and horror as it raised its fists in the air to deliver a crushing blow. With a mighty roar, Eckenroy appeared suddenly out of the night, clutching an enormous log which he swung at the monster's torso with his full strength. The entire upper half of the golem shattered into loose dirt, making a pile behind its upright legs. Its bottom half wobbled, but it quickly stabilized itself again as more mud flowed up to replenish what had been damaged. Soldiers began to appear with torches, their weapons bared.
"Get him out of here!"
Spirion shouted to 2 of them. They immediately moved to grab Jaden, as Eckenroy continued to beat the golem into chunks of dirt with the log as quickly as it could regrow itself. One soldier grabbed Jaden's arms as the other picked up his legs, carrying him away toward the center of the camp. Guards formed on either side of him as they went, searching the darkness for signs of another threat.
"They have to be close. Spread out. Search the wood."
The men mulled around, confused by the order.
"Do it now!"
Eckenroy roared between blows.
"Everyone to the wood if you value your hides. Stab at anything that moves out there."
The closest soldiers obeyed immediately, grabbing more recruits as they headed into the night with torches held high, searching for anything out of place. Eckenroy continued his barrage of heavy blows against the golem until the log finally broke in half.
"Dragon Slayer!"
Tevius yelled, arriving at a full run. The blonde-headed warrior hurled a massive battle mace hilt first, which the general plucked out of the air with a wicked smile. He turned back to face his foe. In the short time the exchange had taken, the golem had fully regrown itself and stood staring at Eckenroy.
"Come for me, mudman. I will break you apart for as long as it takes."
A shout came from the trees. Just then, the monster turned its head as if reacting to something in its peripheral vision. Without another movement, its entire form collapsed, leaving nothing behind but a large pile of dirt, rock, leaves, and twigs. Everyone stood watching the pile as if it might come to life again at any moment. When nothing happened, Eckenroy turned to Spirion.
"Is it Grisland?"
"No. If it was, Jaden would be dead."
"Then who?"
"I do not know."
A young soldier, barely more than a boy, entered the firelight at a run, breathing heavy.
"What is it, Dagon? Did you find something?"
"We saw something. It ran like a man, but I do not think it was. It disappeared into the night like a part of the darkness itself."
"Gather a search party, quickly. 50 soldiers are under your command, on my orders. If you see it, kill it immediately. If trolls or anything else get in your way, kill those too. Use arrows or spears. Only get close if it's absolutely necessary. Head toward Eriden once it is dead, or once the sun is fully up. Go."
"Yes, sir."
Dagon saluted and sprinted off. Spirion raised a questioning eyebrow.
"In case it can use sorcery," he explained. "Before Eriden fell, I lost 6 good men to a sorcerer because they got too close. The soldier I put in charge was one of the best I have ever trained."
The memory of losing Belvin still hurt, even through the pain of so many other losses. The young man had won Jaden's trust as well as his own, and showed so much promise. Had he even been buried? Eckenroy did not think so. No, his body was probably still sitting on a slab inside the royal chapel, gone to rot now, unless Merk's men had disposed of it. Not likely. After they retook Eriden, that would be one of his first tasks. The man deserved a decent burial. He brought himself back to the present and took stock of those around him. Quandus tended to Sidra, who was already sporting a few bruises from her collision with the golem, but otherwise appeared unharmed. A broad-shouldered soldier, whose name he had not yet learned, looked up from examining the motionless form of Zureth Poole. Eckenroy searched the man's face for an indication of the veteran's condition. The soldier shook his head.
"Wrap him."
He had known Poole for nearly 20 years, long before his time in Crysin.
"We will bear his body to Eriden with us, and decide what to do with him once we take the city."
The men nearby bowed their heads in respect. Another man whose body deserved to be laid peacefully to rest. Another whose death he ultimately blamed on the rogue wizard. Clenching his fist, he said a prayer to the thoughts for all who had died because of Grislin's treachery.
"Where is the prince?"
he shouted, not caring that the rage he felt inside had seeped into his voice.
"Here!"
someone yelled. Eckenroy and Spirion moved in the direction the voice had come from, and found Jaden lying on a bed of riding cloaks by the fire of a nearby campsite. There was fresh blood down his front, and he was wheezing audibly. The general bent over him, brushing his hair, damp from the light rain, back from his forehead for a less obstructed view of his face.
"Hang in there, son."
Jaden tried to speak, but only coughed up more blood. Eckenroy turned to Spirion, a wild look of pleading desperation in his normally cool eyes. This was one young man that none of them could afford to lose. Even if they took back the capital, without the heir to the throne.
"Master, there must be something you can do. With my power diminished, anything I do might kill him here and now. You have to try. He will die for certain if you do not. He is barely hanging on as it is. Even if we had a mender, there would be little hope at this point. They would have to be truly blessed by the thoughts to remove the bone and close the wound simultaneously without killing him. At the height of my power, I would have been hard-pressed to do so. It would require the most gifted mender in a generation."
Eckenroy finished, thinking aloud.
"Tevius, I'm here, Dragonslayer. You are in command. This army marches for Eriden now, and doesn't stop until it is in sight of the eastern gate."
Jerking upright, he dashed off toward the hastily constructed pens where the horses were being kept for the night, Spirion lagging at his heels. Throwing open one of the gates, he went straight for Zadosh, leaping onto the back of the powerful stallion without bothering to saddle him.
"No!"
Spirion shouted, blocking the gate as the horse reared in surprise and indignation.
"It is suicide. Get out of my way. I will not command you, but I must plead for you to stay. This army needs you. The thoughts need you. Your death will not bring the boy life." "I said get out of my way. There was nothing I could do for Urien, though I would have died for that man. If I must die for his son, I'd do it willingly." "Yeah!"
Spirion had no choice but to throw himself aside or be trampled. With a loud whinny, horse and rider shot off through the camp and into the night.